Newcastle United's transfer saga involving Alexander Isak has become the defining storyline of this summer window, not just for the club, but across the Premier League and Europe at large. It is a saga that encapsulates the dilemmas of modern football: ambition versus loyalty, financial muscle versus financial responsibility, and the relentless pressure of time as the transfer deadline approaches. The striker's refusal to feature for Newcastle in recent fixtures has heightened the drama, creating a standoff that now dominates every conversation among supporters, pundits, and rival clubs alike. The question of Isak's future has forced Newcastle to confront fundamental issues about their squad building and long-term vision. Do they build around their Swedish star even if his heart is elsewhere, or do they cash in now and attempt to rebuild with the money? The Saudi-backed owners, PIAF, have made clear they are not in the business of being bullied by player power or rival clubs, yet they also understand the unique economics of football transfers. When an asset wants to leave and suitors are ready to pay a fortune, the temptation becomes difficult to resist. Liverpool's initial £110 million offer was flatly rejected, but there is no doubt they remain interested, and whispers suggest they could yet return with something closer to Newcastle's £150 million asking price before the window closes. That figure is staggering, but in today's market it is not unthinkable. Liverpool's pursuit of Isak makes sense on multiple levels. Darwin Núñez has failed to deliver the consistency needed to lead the line at Anfield, his finishing erratic and his decision-making often questioned. Klopp's system thrives on a central forward who can stretch defenses, link play, and finish clinically, all qualities Isak possesses. He is quick, technically gifted, and has the composure in front of goal that Liverpool have missed since the days when Roberto Firmino was at his peak. For Liverpool supporters, the idea of Salah, Diaz, and Isak combining in attack is mouthwatering, and for Klopp, it could be the final piece of the puzzle as he looks to leave Anfield on a high. But for that to happen, Newcastle would have to agree, and as things stand, their resistance remains firm. Eddie Howe has been placed in an unenviable position. Publicly, he insists that Newcastle are focused only on their next game, but privately, he is dealing with the fallout of a striker who refuses to play, a transfer market that offers limited options, and fans desperate for clarity. The offer of Dusan Vlahovic at £25 million should, in theory, have been a solution. A tall, strong, technically adept striker with Champions League experience, available for what now seems a modest fee in today's market. It ticked many boxes. And yet Newcastle have hesitated. Perhaps it is concerns over his injury record, perhaps doubts about his ability to adapt to the Premier League, or perhaps simply a reluctance to commit to such a major decision under pressure. Whatever the reason, Vlahovic remains available, and Newcastle's failure to act could yet come back to haunt them if Isak departs and no proven replacement arrives. The parallels with Newcastle's history are impossible to ignore. The club has been here before with strikers. When Andy Carroll was sold to Liverpool in January 2011 for £35 million, it was hailed as a record-breaking deal, but the Magpies failed to adequately replace him and were left scrambling. Carroll's career never hit the heights at Anfield, but Newcastle suffered too, their lack of firepower costing them dearly. Fans fear history repeating itself, another big money move to Liverpool, another failure to replace, another season undermined by poor planning. The stakes now are higher, with Champions League football on the line, and Howe knows the consequences of mismanaging this situation could be catastrophic. Amid the speculation, Willa name continues to surface. The young Dane, only 22, has found himself propelled into the spotlight by circumstance. His goal against Liverpool was a moment of promise, but also a reminder that he is still learning, still raw. Alan Shearer's assessment was blunt but fair. Okulu has potential, pace, and strength, but he is not yet ready to carry Newcastle's attack. And yet, with Anthony Gordon suspended, Joelinton and Tonali injured, and Isak unavailable, Howe may have no choice but to turn to him against Leeds United. Owen Road is never an easy place to go, and for Okulu a trial by fire. For Newcastle, it is a reminder of how thin their attacking options have become. Newcastle's pursuit of other forwards has been frustratingly unsuccessful. Wolves have stood firm on Jorgen Strand Larsen, rejecting multiple bids despite the striker's 2-goal performance against West Ham in the Carabao Cup, underlining his value. Brentford, meanwhile, have resisted approaches for Yoane Wissa, knowing that losing him would weaken their own squad. These rejections highlight how difficult it is to buy proven strikers late in the window when selling clubs hold all the leverage. Newcastle's attempts have left them short, and unless something changes quickly, they risk heading into September with fewer options than they started with. Luke Edwards of The Telegraph has been insistent all summer that Isak is not for sale, arguing that PF have blocked his departure regardless of circumstances. His latest suggestion is that Newcastle are not even seriously pursuing both Wissa and Strand Larsen, but rather just one as a potential replacement for Callum Wilson in the longer term. If that is true, then the idea of selling Isak this summer becomes even more implausible, as Newcastle simply would not have the cover in place. But football is fluid, and Edwards himself acknowledges that while the window is open, nothing can be ruled out entirely. One of the most intriguing aspects of this saga is Isak's role with the Swedish national team. Despite refusing to play for Newcastle, he remains in line to lead the line for Sweden in their upcoming World Cup qualifiers against Slovenia and Kosovo. It is a contradiction that angers many fans. How can a player declare himself unavailable for his club, but still commit to his country? For Isak, the motivation is clear. His international reputation matters deeply, and leading Sweden is a point of pride. For Newcastle supporters, though, it is a bitter pill to swallow, and one that will only deepen resentment if he does eventually leave for Liverpool. Gabriel Gudmundsson's call-up to the Sweden squad adds another wrinkle, particularly as he could end up playing alongside Isak. The Leeds defender has impressed since arriving from Lille and will face Newcastle this weekend before linking up with his national team. The subplot of Gudmundsson and Isak potentially playing together days after Newcastle and Leeds clash in the league adds another layer to an already complex narrative. For Gudmundsson, it is a chance to establish himself further on the international stage. For Isak, it is another reminder that his club and country commitments are pulling in different directions. The financial side of this story cannot be ignored. £150 million is a staggering sum, and if Liverpool were to meet it, Newcastle could transform their squad almost overnight. They could sign not just one striker, but two, as well as strengthening other areas of need. They could add depth to their midfield, reinforce their defense, and position themselves for a stronger Champions League campaign. But money is not everything, and replacing a player like Isak is not easy. Even with funds, finding someone of equal quality and integrating them quickly is a massive challenge. Newcastle's recruitment strategy has been cautious and methodical under Howe, and a panic buy would go against that philosophy. Yet, with time running out, panic may be the only option left. The wider Premier League picture also plays a role. Other clubs are active, other deals are being struck, and every move shifts the landscape. Manchester United have strengthened, Arsenal have spent big, Chelsea are still throwing money around, and Tottenham are always lurking. Newcastle cannot afford to stand still if they want to compete at the top. Losing Isak without adequate replacements would not just weaken them, it would send a message to rivals that Newcastle are vulnerable, that their project is stalling. That perception alone could have consequences, not just on the pitch but in future recruitment. Players want to join clubs that look ambitious and stable, not ones mired in transfer sagas and uncertainty. For Liverpool, the upside of landing Isak is obvious. He would be a statement signing, proof that they can still attract elite talent even as Klopp prepares to depart. It would give them a forward line capable of challenging Manchester City again and potentially restore them to the summit of English football. For Newcastle, though, it would be a painful reminder that history has a way of repeating itself. Carroll, Wijnaldum, now potentially Isak. The list of stars moving from St James's Park to Anfield would grow longer, and each time it happens, the sense of Newcastle being a selling club deepens. That is not the identity PF want to cultivate, but stopping it requires resolve and perhaps compromise elsewhere. The days ahead will decide everything. If Liverpool raise their bid, if Newcastle secure a replacement, if Isak digs in further, any of these factors could tip the balance. Howe will continue to focus on Leeds, on Osula, on keeping his squad united, but the backdrop will not go away. Every press conference, every training session, every whisper of a bid will feed the narrative. For the fans, the wait is agonizing, a mixture of excitement, dread, and frustration. They know something has to give, but what that will be remains unclear. Ultimately, the Isak saga is about more than football. It is about power, the power of players to dictate their futures, the power of clubs to set valuations, the power of money to shape decisions. It is about loyalty, ambition, and the fine margins between success and failure. Newcastle United stand at a crossroads, and the direction they choose will define not just this season, but perhaps the next several years. For Isak, the choice is whether to fight for a project that made him a star, or to pursue the promise of trophies at Liverpool. For Liverpool, it is about whether to gamble big on one player to transform their attack. And for the fans, it is about watching, waiting, and hoping that their club emerges from this storm stronger, not weaker. The clock is ticking, the tension rising, and the whole football world is watching.